keeping you connected and protected.
Welcome to DAS Talk, the essential podcast on distributed antenna systems and in-building communication. Hosted by Peter, VP of Gamma, and Philip Nicholas. This Gamma Electronic series focuses on emergency response and safety. Join us as we navigate the challenges of building effective communication systems for North America's first responders. We delve into the advancements in emergency responder radio systems and the transformative impact on new technologies. Tune in for insightful discussions aimed at increasing knowledge and awareness in the DAS field. Whether you're a professional or an enthusiast, DAS Talk is your gateway to understanding the nexus of technology, safety, and communication.
Hey everybody, welcome to this episode of DAS Talk. My name is Peter, and I'm the VP of Gamma, and Gil is going to co-host with me today, and he's our Western Coast account executive. We are super excited to have our guests on today. As you can see, we have a whole squad of gentlemen with us. We've got two different companies here today. We have Jack Gruninger, and he's here, the founder of Tap Here. We have Doug Sharp, and he's the president of Triple C. We also have Rob Wright, and he's the VP of Triple C. And we sort of have a marriage of two companies today who are going to discuss some really, really cool things, and we're going to kind of geek out on some fun things, very, very relevant to public safety DAS and DAS installations. And I am very, very excited, as you can see, to be with all of you today. And I'm so grateful that you guys are able to join us and be part of this episode. Now, I'm going to give every single one of you a little bit of a chance to tell us about yourselves. Jack, you're first on my screen, so I'm going to let Jack go ahead and tell us about your background in this industry.
Yeah, thanks, Peter. Jack Gruninger, founder and president of Tap Here. We've been in business about 16 years. And really our key thing that we do, Peter, is systems and software engineering services for both public and private sector. And we're passionate about using technology to solve problems, increase efficiency, lower costs, and seeing those technology solutions, whether it's integration or building new ones, make a difference in our customers' lives. And we serve both federal government and other public organizations and the private sector. So it's great to be here, and thanks for the invite.
Thank you. Rob, you're next on my screen. Go ahead. Tell us about yourself.
Rob Wright, military brat that kind of grew up all over the place. I call Colorado home. I've spent my first career was in public safety, doing EMS, and then went from there to a career in event production management and productions, doing live sound video for touring artists, corporate events for many years all over the country. Did a bunch of hybrid stuff, decided didn't want to travel anymore, and known Doug for years, who was the owner of Triple C. So we chatted and got back into public safety on the communications side, working with Doug. Doing another passion of mine is radio communications. So this was a perfect fit, and been here almost 3 years now, working with Doug and growing the business and innovating and the partnership with Tap Here, creating new opportunities all the way through.
Very good. Very good. Last but not least, Doug, go ahead and introduce yourself, please.
Well, nice to meet everybody here on the podcast. Thank you, Peter and Gil. Doug Sharp. I'm the president and owner of Triple C Communications. Spent pretty much all of my career after college working in land mobile communications, brief period in broadcasting, but working for both land mobile, public safety, commercial, land mobile, and a little bit of cellular PTT in my career. Out here in beautiful Colorado. As the sign at the border says, welcome to colorful Colorado with 27 shades of brown. And when this podcast releases, you'll find that, we had a bunch of wildfires, so it's brown and black right now. But working through that. And that just points out how important public safety communications is. Triple C sells subscriber and infrastructure radio equipment, but we also are very involved in boosting signal for public safety in buildings, PDAs, DAS, whatever you want to refer to it as. And that's why we're here today. So
Awesome.
thrilled to be
Well,
with
that's
you.
great. We're thrilled to be with you guys as well. It's definitely my passion. So I come from a background where I've been in the world of broadband and cellular for quite some time. And over the past few years, have migrated to in-building on in the cellular and in the public safety side. And really, public safety has grown, as you talked about, to be my passion as well. Because I think it's just of the utmost important that when our first responders, our law enforcement, EMS, and firefighters are in buildings, that they're able to communicate as well as communicate outside of the building. And there's a lot of challenges when it comes to that, because this is a very, very diverse landscape of where they're working. And we've had guests come on who discussed and disclosed a lot of challenges that come into play when they're trying to communicate with each other. And as you know, the communication is truly the backbone of executing any project of that nature. When it comes to military, the first thing you try to do is to take out your opponent's communication. And when you do that, you're able to have a significant advantage over them, right? So in this sense, well, sometimes we actually are our own enemy, because the way we build buildings, the way the towers are set up, the way the communication is broken down, and then we have what we call dead spots. So, Doug, I'm going to throw this question at you. What in the world of deploying these systems, what are some of the challenges that you guys have faced when trying to come up with good solutions to fix these problems?
A great question. Challenges. Obviously, the penalties for missed or drop calls in public safety are severe. It's a lot more important that every call gets through rather than on a cell phone or text message. We certainly have time to retry or redial, but public safety doesn't. So it's a matter of finding the right solution for the customer and making sure that that solution doesn't interfere back with their communication system. So in the case of an in-building system, we're working with a building that exists that may be hard-lidded, it may be not built. We're making estimates for how much enhancement to the communications environment do we need. Then we've got to get that system put in. We've got to work with the local regulators, which deal with a national standard, but they all deal with implementations potentially. They don't all take the same pieces of the standard. And then finding the equipment, the test equipment, to prove that it really is working correctly. So there's no one really huge challenge, but there's a bunch of challenges that all play into each other that you've got to get them all right. Otherwise, public safety doesn't have a quality communication system.
So how is it that TAP here and Triple C have managed to come together? Any one of you guys can jump in on this and kind of help provide some solutions for this industry.
Why don't I start, and I'll throw it over to Jack. I was working as Triple C when I purchased Triple C in 2016, coming out of a large equipment manufacturer in the United States here, and a small business, very different. And I was looking to be able to do our in-building systems better, faster, and at a better value to the customer. So I had a need. The test equipment that we had was big, bulky, lots of human error, wasn't very power efficient, and it was very expensive. And we saw a need for better measurement, higher quality, be able to collect this data faster, and then deliver it in a form to the end jurisdiction, the building owner, the agency having jurisdiction, the AHJ, in a format that they were familiar with. And so we identified that need. Then we saw this. I had some knowledge in the industry working with TAP here at my former company. And we said, this is a great application for their product. So I'll let Jack tell you about that.
Yeah, thanks, Doug. TAP here has been building software-defined radio solutions for about the last 10 years. And the latest version that we've built, called Sabre, Software Agile Baseband Radio, is about 90% of it is software and 10% of it is hardware. That's why it's a software-defined radio. The idea is most people think of radios as 100% hardware, right? Whereas we're flipping the scenario on that, and our design premise is we're making this 90% software and 10% hardware. So the hardware component of Sabre is about the size of a deck of cards, and the software for our solution we're going to describe that Doug and I and Rob came together on runs on a Microsoft Surface tablet or really any Windows touchscreen. So 90% of the solution is in software running on a Surface tablet, and then we have a small percentage of the radio running on a device that's about the size of a deck of cards. So the idea, Doug and Rob have the operational user experience on signal testing in the field and signal surveys for in-building and otherwise, and the RF communications expertise applied to public safety. Whereas, our part of the story is we've got a powerful software-defined radio that can be easily adapted to various problem sets like signal strength measurement, ease of reporting, and automation of tasks that normally were done manually in the field up until the last few years.
So in the world of reporting and putting together these tests, just so I can wrap my brain around this, and why exactly you feel like this solution needed to come into play. I like the idea of a deck of cards. It sounds rather intimate and rather small. Maybe you have an ace of spades there. I don't know. But that said, what were they doing before versus what you guys are proposing now? Can you explain to me the significance of?
That's a great one for Doug and Rob or Rob.
Let's give Rob a chance to jump in.
Well, the previous testing equipment that was out there is pricey for the smaller integrators. The test equipment that is currently on the market starts around $25K and goes up sharply from there. And for smaller companies like CCC, where we have 13 employees, that's a hard cost to take in. And to do the readings that we're doing, we just couldn't justify that value of it for what that technology was. So coming up with a solution that is more cost driven for the smaller integrators such as ours, that's kind of where this kind of developed and concept created. The other solutions are great. They're out there. The price on them is amazingly high, and they have all sorts of bells and whistles in it. But for what we're trying to do and the tests we're performing, we didn't need half of those bells and whistles, but they don't really offer a solution for half those bells and whistles. So this was more of a solution designed for.
I see.
Is that about right, Doug?
And Rob, why don't we tell them a little bit? The other way of doing this is taking a two-way radio, putting it in a test mode, and simply reading signal strength. But the technician will sit here and move it around looking for the reading that they want. And we wanted to take a little bit of that uncertainty out. First of all, it's a very slow process. Second, it's not as accurate. And then moving it all around skews the data a lot. So, but it's what we had at the time. So a lot of jurisdictions were saying, don't use these two-way radios anymore. Use a spectrum analyzer or one of these expensive test tools that we've talked about. And we just, we kind of said there's the old slogan in the marketplace: better, faster, cheaper, pick two. And we kind of say better, faster, and value you get to pick 3 with us. We don't think of ourselves as cheap, because that kind of implies cheap imported things that may or may not work well. We believe we have a value because we're running an American-made product that's designed and built between Virginia and Colorado. We do believe we're better because of the software and the automation that we've put into here. Hence, it is faster, which means you can deliver a better quality survey in less time. And we'll get into some of those features later. But so that's kind of why this thing was created. We wanted something that was power efficient, fast, and would give high quality results.
And I want to add on to that, Gil and Peter, the other thing important to us is increasing efficiency when we deliver a solution that we talked about earlier. And the other side of that is the reporting that you asked about, right? So the idea of automatic report generation with that better way of collecting data and more accurate way of collecting exact data through multiple points, and then being able to report on that immediately is a big time saving for the folks in the field. And, that's really exciting to us when we can see that work result in time savings for the end user.
Yeah, now we send a technician out, and instead of having to, the old way of take a reading with the handheld radio and then write it down on a piece of paper, then come back to the office, transpose all of that into a digital format so we can send a PDF to the AHJs or the customer. Now they take the reading, and while they're getting into their vehicle, they send the report to the office, and the account rep is now sending it off to either the customer or the AHJ, whichever the case may be. But the technician doesn't have to come back to the office and spend several hours in front of a computer rewriting all the information that they've already taken data for.
So Rob, from doing it, say the old school way, you're saying with a radio, you're writing down, on a piece of paper, to saying doing it with the testing procedure or solution like that you guys offer, what do you think that time savings would be? I mean, what would be, kind of the old way of doing it? And what would be, say, the newer way? I mean, we talking days, hours, weeks? Like, what would you say that time differential would be?
I think we figured out to be about 75% time savings. I took an example of a 47-story commercial building, office building, and we would do readings on it for 6 hours, and you're doing transposing of it about 8 hours to get everything transposed into the software to create the grids and everything. Once you set up the device with the grids and all the imaging, you just walk through and tap. Previously, you would be in the office before you left. You would build your grid map out, print everything, get your clipboard ready, grab your radio, head out there, and then you have to walk the whole place. And of course, walking 47 stories, you're doing all the stairwells because you got to take readings there. You're getting exhausted, and sometimes that would split into 2 days worth of taking readings and then come back and spend that amount of time to transpose it. But I think from my team's aspect of it, it's been about 75% time saving.
So to add to that, he's very correct. Part of the time savings is taking the reading and not going through the paper. The other piece is when we get into certain customer scenarios where they might have, and the one that Rob is referring to is in the downtown Denver with the city and county of Denver's trunking system, which is a 4-site simulcast, and that's what we're looking for on that channel. But they also have a backup site on a local mountaintop that we have to also measure. So now in the old way, they were actually not reading one reading, but 2, taking this radio and saying, okay, let me switch to the simulcast. Let me get a reading here. It looks like it's neg 85. Okay, now let me switch to the other. And they go to the alternate system, which is usually further away, but okay, that one is minus 91. They write both of those down, and now they've got to transcribe it when they get back to the office, risk of an error. The new with the pinpoint we program in multiple channels. It looks and goes to each. When we say go, it takes the first channel. It takes approximately, it's configurable, but we usually set it for about 1 second of readings. We record all of those readings. We then apply the algorithm, whether it's an average or a standard deviation, so we can throw out the outliers and get a very accurate signal reading with propagational fading, log normal fading. There's probably not a lot of Rayleigh fading in the building, but there could be from elevators moving around you and things. So that's a time savings. And then everything that Rob pointed out in the transcription, it just adds up to the point that, yes, this large building, it's right across the street from the Colorado Convention Center. It used to take us a day and a half to get the readings and then another day to do the work. With Tap Here, Triple C's, Pinpoint, I believe, Rob, we were down to, from start to finish, data collection and produce the report in under 6 hours. So that's huge.
And on top of, oh, go ahead, Doug, sorry.
The other thing is when we present this to the jurisdiction, to the fire inspector, they may say, I don't believe this reading you got here. This doesn't make sense to me. And we can actually, we record the raw data and we can actually look at the spectral analysis of that data point for a brief period of time. You know, we obviously were only there for a few seconds with data reading, but the inspector can actually look at a spectrum analyzer and go, okay, yeah, you really did have signal that really does look like a P25 and the noise was appropriately low. We can also see, gee, this was all broadband noise that you have some air conditioning unit that's arcing over and just, that's not usable signal.
Yeah,
that
so that's
also
a key
speeds
point,
us up.
Doug, too. There is not only is the data saved for jurisdiction reporting, but also it's saved in a dynamic format so you can see the graph. And that's saved with the project for calling that up at a later time.
And, you know, there's two things involved there. One, when we go back to do another annual, because there's requirements in the fire code to do annual inspections every year, we can grab that data and take a look and see what might have changed. Why is it failing here, you know, compared to last year? What are the readings like? And pull that up. Plus that data file sitting there. So when we go back to do that building, we don't have to do any prep. We just grab the previous file, open it up and start taking readings. And now we've captured it in a new year for the next year. One other thing I was going to point out is the old way, you know, Doug was showing, you hold the handheld radio, you're moving around trying to find the best signal, and that's what you're going to write down. That's not real life scenario of how a firefighter or a paramedic or a police officer is going to walk into the building. So the police officer, their radio's on their hip. It's sitting over here, it's up on their vest. Firefighters, they have those cool slings and it's hanging down near their hip. Paramedics, they're on their hip. That's the real life scenario that these emergency workers are going to be using their radio. They're not going to pull it out, move it around to try to find the best signal. So the device that we have, the Saber, goes into a holster on our hip, plugs into the laptop, and we're walking with it that way, or the tablet. We've seen several other folks, other groups that are using spectrum analyzers or the other device, and they're moving around trying to find the best signal. That kind of gives us a false reading of what's going to be actually happening in that building, and it could put, you know, first responders at risk of not being able to call in a mayday or other information they need to get across the air.
Wow, I love it. Sounds really, really kind of cool. I mean, just from practical point of view, the time savings factor in the report reading seems to be very advantageous. So what format maybe you can help our listeners a little bit here, because we have a lot of AHJs listening as well. So what format are they used to getting their reports in? And is it a PDF that they get, or what is it that they normally get?
Yeah, they typically get a PDF. So your PDF will give you the top information about the facility. Does it have a BDA in it or not? What type of BDA? Things like that. What the device that you're using to test with, the calibration certificate of that device, type of antenna you're using, those type of details, then a little narrative of what type of test is it, an annual, a initial survey, a 5-year, those type of things that are some of the agencies ask for. Then below that, you'll see the actual blueprint or floor plan with the grids over it and the numbers of the readings per each grid. And then below that is a kind of a spreadsheet of those readings that match those grids. So they actually see the numbers. That's a typical report that the AHJ will take. Sometimes they come back and they ask for more details on a specific area. They're confused why one area is lower than another, or, that doesn't make sense. So we can pull up more information. But a typical report is in that fashion. Now, because we're doing multiple frequencies and we have, not only Denver has their 2 channels that we have to listen to, we're in an area in the Southeast metro area. There's multiple sites for the state of Colorado DTRS system. We might be taking multiple readings from multiple sites, multiple control channels to find which site's going to be better. Or we have a school district that has their security team is on the state radio system, but all the fire response is from the city of Aurora, which has their own DTRS simulcast system. We'll need to take 2 different readings from that to show will the radio system work in there, or if their Aurora Fire and then their Arapahoe Sheriff's Department is responding there. Again, the same scenarios, 2 radio systems. So we're taking multiple readings at once. You'll get a report for each radio frequency we put in there separated so they can look at every single option they have for that facility. And, the system administrator might say, hey, you're over there, Smoky Hill's a better reading, but we're already hitting Smoky Hill radio site with too many BDAs. You're able to hit Chevron. We'd like you to aim to Chevron instead. So things like that come into play as well when we're working with the radio administrators on some of these facilities. They may try to balance the load to the radios.
So maybe I can take Peter's job and ask you a follow-up question, Rob. And this is a little bit of a loaded question, but is every AHJ require a report exactly the same as every other? They all base from a standard fire code, but they may focus or they may define 1 year, 5 years, build a little differently. And we've tried to address that in our report generator. And maybe you could just touch on.
Yeah, the report generation is somewhat customizable and formatable, and you can massage it. The basics of the report is kind of a standard across everybody per the International Fire Code. Like in Colorado, we have some departments that only require annuals. We have some departments that require annuals in 5 years. We have some AHJs that say it's grid readings on a single floor. We have others that say every 20 feet is a grid. There's some that say, okay, in a 20 grid area, if you have more than 5 failures, you need down to up to 40 grid areas. So we can go in and customize that for the agency we're working for and the area we're working for right in the software. There's other customizations of adding your own logo to it and changing verbiage in there. You've got your own custom defined fields that you can fill out within there to meet your AHJ's requirements. And if they really needed something more specific, we talk to the customer about it and we modify it on the back end for what we need to do.
We've tried to do a one-size-fits-all is what you're saying. I think that's important that the agency gets what they expect and what they really want.
Yeah, so from what I've seen, it's different in various different AHJs. In other words, what they're asking for is different. So it sounds to me that your reporting solution is really not only what you can test for at different frequencies like you're talking about, but also how you present it, because they sort of focus on different things from time to time. I mean, there's not one standard way per se to do this or requisites to do this and how things need to look. So I actually just think that's kind of cool. I think that's really kind of a neat feature to add there.
Really important thing is the fire inspector may be a radio background person. They may not. It's important that we give the jurisdiction the reports in the format that they want, and that we don't want the tail wagging the dog. We've got to give it to them the way they need it. They know their requirements. They know their safety policies. and we have to comply. And that's important with any tool, whether it's ours or somebody else's. Give them what they need in the language and format that they need it.
And from the tech perspective, the recovering engineer that I am, a key thing for us was being able to make the open architecture. And a lot of people say our stuff is open architecture. Well, what does that really mean? Right? It means a lot of different things. So what we tried to do was not just being able to customize reports, but I want to get back to the fact that the data is there and can be offloaded in a format that can be used to create other reports in the future, or do trend analysis year over year, or sites versus site. Like, that data is not just printed in a report and shipped off to an AHJ. The value is, with an open architecture system, I can offload that data and I can use it for, various things in the future as well. It's not just a one-shot report.
So Jack, would that be something like you're saying you would offload and offer like to an AHJ in terms of for their own metrics or analysis?
With appropriate permissions, that data is available.
Gotcha.
Where from the tech side, we just want to make the data available and open so it can be pulled off and used later as needed, either in aggregate format, or maybe you have to recreate the report from 2020, let's say, right? For whatever reason.
So what tests are you guys performing, and are they different from jurisdiction to jurisdiction, or do they all require the same type of test? And what tests are you typically doing?
Most jurisdictions, actually all of them, are looking at an RSSI level. They may have different levels that they want. Some require neg 85 dB, some require neg 95. But, and again, we can set those parameters as things fail in the system. But they're looking at an RSSI level to come in. There's some agencies that are looking at more advanced measurements up to that, but that's the baseline, is an RSSI level.
So RSSI, for if there's some new people on the podcast, receive signal strength indication, or basically signal level. There's also some mention in the fire code of signal to noise and interference ratio, which we're implementing in the unit. And then there is some mention in the fire standard of bit error rate, but there's very limited detail as to what is needed for bit error rate and how to measure it. But those are the three biggies. We're looking at bit error rate now, but we're working on the received signal strength and the signal to noise and interference tests is where we're focused at this time. And that's across most every jurisdiction says you got to do these, and can you do bit error rate, because they've seen it in the standard. And then when we have the discussion of what we have to do, they quite often back away from it because there's not enough definition yet.
Gotcha. Well, I was going to ask you too, Doug, is there a way to incorporate like DAQ, delivered audio quality, into that as well? Because I know some jurisdictions are requiring a DAQ level of 3.4, but is there a way, say, with your solution to kind of incorporate that at the same time as you're collecting the other data?
We really haven't replaced the human ear, so doing DAQ automated is challenging with small equipment running on the hip of somebody's belt. So typically, our big jurisdictions that require that, they want to go in themselves and hear the audio quality with their own.
The other challenge there is you have to have a radio on the system that you can talk. Most agencies aren't going to give integrators a radio that they can just talk on their radio system with. So that's a challenge for DAQ. But most of the times when they come to do the actual inspection, if there's a system being put in there, or they're doing annual walkthrough fire inspections, they'll do their own DAQ test and call dispatch or somebody at the radio.
Very cool. So, just to get a quick overview, it integrates with a tablet, right? Did you say it integrates with a phone too, or no? No, right?
A PC
PC.
tablet. We use Surfaces primarily, some HP tablets. I think, Jack, your team's got some of those, some Dells. My team's now using a rugged tablet, either a Toughbook or GTAC tablets, just because they're technicians in the field. They're rough on equipment, so we want to let them last as long as we can. But yeah, it's a PC-based program. The way our team does it is everything. We use Microsoft Teams for our project management side. So we put a file in there. They can pull the file right out of Teams, drop it into Tap here, do the work, move it right back into Teams. The process moves on. They're off to the next site. Sometimes one of my technicians will do 2 or 3 properties in a day and not even have to come back to the office. By the time he's back to the office, my project manager has already submitted the reports. It's all done.
Yeah, so picture,
that's
Peter,
amazing.
the bell clip of, the deck of cards size hardware device with the antennas on the bell clip, and then it's a USB connection to the side of the Surface. And then, it's just a series of tap here's. Very easy to operate for anybody who uses Windows, in other words.
And I think that's great because, part of our industry or just in terms of trying to get things done, time is the factor, right? Someone needs a TCO, temporary certificate of occupancy, or, someone's telling them they need to put a system in. And so it's like, well, we need this in by Monday. And you're like, well, we're at Wednesday. That's not going to happen. But just the fact that, you can do that, you can find out, do you need a system, where you're hopefully going to need a system, and try to get that process going a little quicker. Because, I still feel like, in the ERC space, it's not necessarily an afterthought, but we're just kind of, lingering out there somewhere. And then, when it comes up, all of a sudden it's a sense of urgency and we got to do this right away. But I like the fact that it sounds like with the solution, you can help cut that time factor significantly from the reporting side to know kind of what do you need to do or what's the next step. So I think that's great.
Yeah, you're very correct, Gil. When we're going for a TCO or temporary, you got to look at a few things. But the other piece of this is if you're running with a 2-way radio and you're moving it around to find you've got a lot of uncertainty. While you're building the system, you can actually test out and look at, do I have uniform signal level across the whole building? You can look at your spectrum plot. We've actually been called into certain buildings that we didn't install the systems, but to do the annual because that company was either out of business or didn't want the follow-up work. And we found oscillating VDAs, and with the spectrum analysis capability of this, we can actually see an improperly running unit. And sometimes it's just broad-banded noise and we don't get a reading. Other times we've seen cases where, yes, there was a reading, there was a legitimate signal on our channel, but there were also spurs and signals on illegitimate channels, causing interference to other potentially public safety or commercial users. And obviously we can't have that. This kind of tool opens our eyes, gives us a pair of glasses that we can see into what's going on.
So what's the learning curve? Can you tell me about the learning curve to figuring out how to use your guys' software, your pinpoint, right? It's what you called it, the pinpoint, the device, and then the tap here software. What was the name of the software again, Jack?
The solution together, hardware and software, is called Pinpoint.
Okay.
So we can pinpoint the issues. But we found learning is anywhere from 5-10 minutes to an hour. It's very easy to use. Probably the most work and effort will be adapting your floor plan to the right data file in the right, data file format and getting your edges cropped out properly than it is actually to set up the equipment. What do you think, Rob? It's minutes. It's not hours or days to bring this thing.
I jokingly judge it. I have one of my technicians is a great engineer. He's in his late 30s, quick on technology, knows Windows, knows moving files and stuff, and he picked it up within minutes. And then I have another technician who's, I think Mike's on his second, they're both named Mike, on his second career, and he's an older gentleman. He doesn't want to retire and sit at home, so he keeps it up. Took him about 30 minutes to really grasp it. And the most we have to work with him is just making sure he puts the file in the right place on Teams so it moves back to the office the right way. But him using the tap here wasn't really that big of a challenge. Like Doug said, it was manipulating the floor plan so you have your grid coverage and then moving with it. From there, it's just, it works out really well.
So you have to download the floor plan first, obviously, right? Okay.
Yep, you input the floor plan, you crop the floor plan so it's nicely fitted, and then you can actually scale the floor plan in the software, tell it what the scale is, and then you can overlay your grid based on what grid you need, 20 by 20 foot grids or 40 grids or 20 grids or whatever is required for that AHJ.
Love it. Okay, sounds very cool. And so this pinpoint's already available right now of an integrator. I don't think we talked about I have to dive into price point on this because I don't remember us discussing that. So you mentioned other testing equipment was $25,000. That is a fair chunk of money, and for I think small integrators, I do think that's they might want to rent that versus doing it. And depending on how often they also deploy BDAs, they may want to consider, not purchasing that. That might be kind of a hefty bullet to bite. What's the price point on the pinpoint?
I guess I'll take this one. $99, right, Jack, for the Saber and a Surface tablet to go with it. And then, correct me if I'm wrong, just $7,000 for the Saber and the pinpoint software, and you provide your own tablet. Am I right around that, Jack, without pulling up numbers?
Yeah, and we will always talk to you about volume discount also with multiple purchases, multiple pinpoint purchases. We have a volume discount plan as well. Like for a smaller company that has 5 or 10 field technicians, that would be important.
And then you can also buy expansions on the software for updates and calibration of the device. Most agencies require yearly calibrations. It's dependent on the manufacturer's recommendations. In some cases, I believe we've settled on a 2-year calibration right now with the Saber. I'm looking at Jack and Doug to confirm if I'm wrong here.
And the other part, which I was going to bring up later too, Peter, so that includes all software updates for the first year as well. And it's important. Most people think of radios or hardware devices as when you're going to get an update. The next time you're going to get an update is when a new version comes out in 2 years, right? Whereas the good news about it being software defined, as we hear good ideas, we can incorporate those into our quarterly release schedule, and our customers get those updates after the release goes live. Just like you get updates to your Windows software on all of your systems, let's say, Pinpoint we have a quarterly release schedule where those features, where we hear good feedback from the field, we can incorporate those immediately into the next release, given the size and the complexity of the change. So you're not just buying a static device at the beginning on day one that you you're buying, since it's software defined, you're going to get the updates as well based on the collective experience of all of the pinpoint users.
Almost kind of like open source to a degree, right? I mean, I'm not saying it's exactly like that, but it's got some of the concept behind that. It's kind of involved in this, which
Well, it's
I think
it's basically a software maintenance program that we make sure that your software and your hardware, if you purchase the maintenance, is up to date and you get that piece. And this is a place that I'm probably gonna request that we do a retake and get some firm numbers and don't have well, I think it is, so we may want to redo this one. And I believe the summary is it's $99.99 with the tablet, but there are a number of our customers that have said we have our own IT and standards, we want to provide the tablet. So I thought that was $7,500.
Yeah, that's what Rob said, right?
Well, Rob said 7. So, and then we do have the maintenance program, and it is a 1-year right now calibration that we are investigating. Can we push it out to a 2 as a manufacturer's recommendation and still stay within fire code? So I don't know if you want to use, Peter and Gilbert, the previous, or if you want us to kind of do a retake on this.
we can do a retake. I'll ask the question again, and then you can answer it however you guys want to
Who
answer it.
wants to answer it? I guess, Rob, do you want to do it?
I'll pass it to you, Doug. Go ahead.
Great. Now I got to remember it all. But it was.
I can take it. I'll take it.
Did I get it correctly?
Yeah,
Let's throw it to Jack.
Okay. So on your pinpoint, we talked about previously other products being, pretty high priced in the $25,000 range. That's, as I said, that's a pretty big bullet to bite, especially for a small integrator who's got a handful of technicians. And in most instances, if they're working on multiple jobs, they may want to have each technician have the testing equipment, right? Or at least the majority of their technicians to have them. So that would be 25 grand per tech. That's a lot. I mean, even if you have a few, that's a lot of money. So what's the price point of your pinpoint?
We have 2 price points, Peter. The first is $9,999, just under $10,000, and that includes the tablet and the pinpoint hardware, software, hardware and software maintenance for the first year. The second price point is some of our customers have their own IT department and deploy their own hardware and software and Windows end user devices. So without the end user pinpoint software and hardware is $7,500. Without the tablet that, for instance, a company might provide on their own. So without the tablet, the end user, it's very simple installation and configuration instructions, much like any other Windows app. When you get the tablet in that package, we do the installation and configuration before shipping. So if you think about it, in summary, there's a package with the Surface or touchscreen Windows tablet that's $9,999, just under $10,000, and then $7,500 without the touchscreen Windows tablet.
And then they can, if they wish to maintain their calibration for the jurisdictions, we can put them on a maintenance program for both software and hardware, which they will get after that first year. They'll get all of the software updates, and we will recalibrate or verify calibration on their hardware and send them a new certificate. So that's also available.
So that's a recurring fee, which what does that run for? The maintenance part.
The maintenance part is 20% of the annual of the base price on an annual basis. But that also includes, as we discussed, it also includes all of the software updates. And right now we're on a quarterly release cycle. So in other words, you don't have to wait for the next generation of hardware to come out for an upgrade, because 90% of the functionality is in software. we can do quarterly release updates a lot like you get software updates on your, normal PC, and you don't have to wait for a hardware update, which could be, a year and a half, 2 years. So in other words, as we get lessons learned from the field and other pinpoint users, we can immediately incorporate them into software functionality, which, sounds like kind of standard software maintenance. But in the case of something that's traditionally hardware, that's kind of a new way of thinking about it, which is kind of, important for being able to do the updated releases, not just for on a long-term annual or wait for the next release to come out. We're constantly looking at ways to improve and, make it more valuable to the end user.
And so, Jack, I'm assuming new feature sets, all that stuff would be included in the hardware update or software updates. Sorry, not the hardware updates, but the software updates, correct? Gotcha. That's
so
great.
You get the when you buy Pinpoint, whether it's with or without the tablet, first year of software updates you get. And then, starting on day 365, you pay your, next year's annual software license support fee, just like you would for any other enterprise software that's out. Except Pinpoint is much better.
Well, fantastic, gentlemen. This has been really, really good discussion to have with you. There's certain things, my takeaway on it is what I like about what you're doing is not just the time savings, but I think because a CCC is an integrator themselves and they walk through and they navigate through the challenges of working with the multiple different stakeholders in this. Because there are multiple stakeholders, and the end result is to deliver, signal that everyone can use and communicate. But all the parties involved need to be kind of on the same page. And because you can walk through that, and you have walked through that, that kind of gives you a unique perspective when it comes to what an integrator is looking for in testing. And I think you've done a very, very good job at identifying some of the problems or the need for something in the industry, because you can have a great product any day of the week, but if there's no need for it, you're never going to sell, right? So I think that's a really kind of cool thing that you guys have done, and you team together. And usually when you corroborate and you team together, amazing things can be done. And I think you guys have really stepped on that. That's my professional opinion at this point. So great job on today's discussion, and thank you all for being with us today and tuning in to DAS Talk.
DAS Talk by Gamma, keeping you connected and protected.